Alright YouTubers, what's going on? So today we're going to look at probably my favorite knife. Definitely the favorite knife I have now, but could possibly be my favorite knife I've ever had. And that's saying quite a bit. And you'll have to excuse me, I'm feeling a little under the weather. I had a cold, kind of fighting a cough, so apologize if I cough or clear my throat at all, because it's just the way it is. I'm sucking on a cough drop right now also. So, disclaimers aside, let's talk about this knife. First of all, this is a limited edition ZT factory custom. Right there, you get this great presentation box. Certificate of authenticity, I have a hard time with that word. Serial number 63, so I got a low serial number. So, cool story behind this before we get into the knife, of how I obtained this knife. And I kind of hit on this on my Thursday night chat, but if you don't watch that, then you get to hear it now. So I originally had tried to buy one of these the day they came out. Me and myself and thousands of other people probably. Very few were made, and 5 retailers had them. And it pretty much was a disaster, in my opinion, the way it was handled. And I shouldn't say the way it was handled, but the way it went down with the different retailers. One of the retailers crashed completely for the day. Others had like oversold inventory because they didn't manage their inventory correctly. How they had 6, let's say, and they sold 10. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but something like that. So that's basically what happened to me. I had one in my cart, and it was pretty much taken out from underneath me in 2 different retailers. So I was really bummed. I thought I missed it. So I'm a member over in USN, Usual Suspects Network, and they have a great Kershaw ZT forum over there. And Thomas W., who is, kind of renowned there at Kai, he posts there quite often, and he made a thread. We kind of had a thread going about 392 when it was coming out, and those of us that got them, those of us that didn't. And he made a comment, or made a thread saying, how many of you didn't get a 392 that posted, on that certain thread and tried to buy one and didn't get one. So a few of us replied, actually about, I think it was like 10 to 15 of us replied, and said, hey, we weren't able to get one. So Thomas went out of his way, him and Pat over at Kai, to get a list of those together, and all of us had the opportunity to buy one at normal price directly from Kai, from ZT Knives. Pretty phenomenal. I mean, how many big companies like Kershaw, Kai USA, would do something like that for their customers? Not very many. I was very, very humbled, and I was very excited, and I was just blown away. And I've always been a long-time ZT fan, but this won me over for life. I mean, I probably already was, but this was just a phenomenal gesture to not have to pay secondary market prices, because I really refused to pay them. They were really inflated, and I didn't really want to buy it for that much. But for the regular price of $375, this knife is phenomenal. Now, I'm not saying it's not worth more than that. It may be to you, but it wasn't to me. So that was phenomenal that I was able to be one of the lucky few to have a second chance, so to speak, buy one directly from them. They shipped it out very quickly, and I've actually had it probably a week and a half. So, but this is the first video I've been able to make. Just been busy with some other stuff, and like I said, feeling under the weather a little bit. So, first video, but I've been carrying this knife every single day, non-stop. So it's just a phenomenal piece. Let's get into the specs a little bit. You got a 3.5-inch blade made of CTS 204P steel. For those of you not familiar with that steel, very, very, very similar to M390. This was actually originally supposed to be an M390, but kind of a shortage of that steel going on right now with Bowler, so a lot of the U.S. manufacturers of knives are having a hard time finding that steel, so they switched it to the CTS 204P. It's very, very similar steel and more readily available. So, 3.5-inch blade. It's got we'll call it a modified drop point, harpoon style. Got this awesome swedge right here. It's a beautiful blade. I much prefer this blade style to the Tanto that comes on the normal Hinderer Eclipse. Because for those of you that aren't aware, the 392 is essentially a Hinderer Eclipse. What they do is Hinderer supplies the hardware, the titanium pivot, body screws, filler tabs, and pocket clip. ZT assembles the knife, builds the knife, builds the titanium, builds out the titanium, builds the blade. Everything is done by ZT. Just the hardware is done by Rick, and then they assemble them. So pretty incredible. That's why they call it a factory custom. In retrospect, if you were to try to buy a full tie Hinderer Eclipse, it would probably cost you $700 or $800. The regular Eclipses on the secondary market are more in the $500 range, and those are just G10 scales with stainless steel hardware. So getting the titanium hardware and scales is a huge upgrade. But as I was saying, the the full custom titanium scales, the full titanium hardware, this is a really good bargain for the $375 asking price. So phenomenal knife. Now, this is not my first Rick Hinderer design. I've actually owned an XM18, a 560, a 550, the 566, the Cryo. I mean, I can think of many Rick Hinderer design knives that I've owned. This is by far my favorite of those. The Eclipse is an incredible design. It is so well thought out as far as the design elements are concerned. It's just incredible. You get it in your hand and you think, holy cow. I mean, there's a lot of design and thought that went into this knife with this, like this slope right here from the scale, this kind of ramp, is so perfect for your thumb. It's insane. And it even like matches up perfectly, at least with mine, with this joint right here. So, I mean, you're talking perfect comfort there. Perfect. The jimping here is not too aggressive. It's very nice. It bites, gives you good grip, but it's not overly aggressive like so many knives do these days. The ergonomics of the scale here with these finger choils is perfect in this grip. If you do a reverse grip, it's perfect. I mean, I can't think of a better way to grip this knife at all. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So, ergonomics wise, one of the most comfortable knives I've ever had. And again, that's saying quite a bit. A lot of knives have come through these hands. So, look how smooth that is. Let's just do that again for fun. Oh man, so smooth. So ergonomics wise, beautiful. The finish on the knife is outstanding. It's what they call the Rick Hinderer working finish. Is essentially a heavy stone wash, but it's perfect for a daily EDC knife because you're not going to see much wear on this knife ever. It's not like a CRK, and I happen to get the one I've modified, but you get that bead, and I've sanded this down, but you get the bead blasted finish that just shows every scratch, everything you can imagine. This is a much more preferred finish. It just doesn't show any wear. It's almost got a dark, like I said, a dark acid / stone wash to it. It's called the working finish. So same on the blade. Heavy stone wash on the blade. Again, very advantageous. Not going to show a lot of wear. Not going to show scratches. This is a knife that's meant to be used. This is no safe queen. This is no limited edition that you're going to throw in your safe and flip from time to time. This is one that goes right in your pocket and you use it. And that's exactly what I've been doing for the last week and a half. I mean, I don't remember the last time I carried this same knife every day for that long. It's been a while, but as soon as I got it and had it in my hand, I was like, bam, this is it. It's perfection. Okay, let's not get carried away. It's not perfect, but it's very close. So let's talk about the Rick Hinderer Eclipse versus the ZT392. What are the differences? Very few. Styling is exactly the same type of materials. Obviously the hardware. The jimping on the flipper is identical to an Eclipse, which for this knife doesn't really... I know they were trying to stick close to the Eclipse design, but for this knife, the jimping's there like that for a Hinderer knife that doesn't have the type of detent this has, and it's also on washers. So it's more, you have to more preload that flipper on a Hinderer, so that jimping does help. On this knife, it's like no effort to flip this knife. I mean, you can do it, push button, load it up, but you absolutely don't have to. You can barely flick it back with your finger like a light switch, and it just fires out of there. So that's identical. Hardware, everything. Blade shape, obviously we went over that already. Tanto on the Eclipse versus this harpoon / modified drop point, not sure what to call it, blade on the ZT392. I much prefer this. I also prefer the use of bearings. The KVT system by ZT is a very proven design. It's just improved with every flipper that I've gotten from ZT. It's just gotten better and better. They're smoother and smoother. The detent is absolutely perfect. It's got a strong detent, but not overly strong. Like some knives I've flipped, I'm like, holy cow, I'm busting my fingers. I mean, you can see how easily I can do that. Yet that knife just rockets out, just flies open. and then you give it a little release and it falls on itself. Probably one of the smoothest knives I've ever had. Not quite as smooth as the John Grinsmo Norseman, which I have filmed that video. Have not had a chance to upload it yet. But that was definitely the smoothest knife ever. But that's a full custom. This is a production knife. You have to wrap your head around this. Even though they call it a factory custom, it's still a production knife. I can't think of a nicer production knife out there, in my opinion. If it is, it's probably a limited edition ZT. So ZT is just blowing me away with this knife. It's phenomenal. I would actually see no reason to buy a Hinderer Eclipse because of this knife, because it flips better, it's on bearings, it has a better blade shape, it's full titanium, it's got all the same hardware. You can swap out different hardware. They're starting to sell the bronze, the natural titanium. He even had some, I said bronze earlier. I meant, yeah, bronze. Copper and brass furniture. Hardware, we'll call it hardware. That's crazy. So there's a lot of customization available. You can get a steel flame clip. You can get that Rick Hinderer, horse clip. You can get the skull ones. I mean, there's so many options. You can get the different filler tabs that'll work with this knife. So the customization is incredible. I mean, you could really make this knife your own. I plan on changing out the hardware. I really like the blue titanium. It looks so good with this natural tie finish, with this, heavy stone wash. But just to have something else to change it out to. So that's another incredible thing that they're doing. Again, as we see with ZT, is one thing they do incredibly well is they know how to produce quality knives at a good price point. Made in the USA. I say that because they are so good at producing knives. They work with so many good designers in turn. Todd Rexford, Tim Galayan, Rick Hinderer, just to name a few. Dmitry Sinkovich. A lot of cool stuff coming out with him. A new Les George knife's coming out soon. I should have one in my hands this week. All these phenomenal custom knife makers working with Kershaw and ZT. Why? Because they know they can produce their models the way that they would produce them, that they way they would put them out. Ernest Emerson, that was the other one. Funny enough, I think ZT does Hinderer and Emerson better than Hinderer and Emerson does. And I know I'm not the only one that thinks that. So they do an incredible job of producing knives and manufacturing knives to really high tolerances, nearly excuse me, as high as a CRK. More and more of these higher end ZTs I get, the more I have to go back and look at my CRKs and be like, man, it's pretty close. It's pretty close to the craftsmanship and the tight tolerances that you find on Chris Reeves knives. Price-wise, this is a very similar price knife to a small Sebenza. Obviously, the small Sebenza is much smaller, but price-wise, you're about the same price. Now, I keep saying price-wise. I noticed on some of the other videos on the 392, they really didn't talk about price, and a few comments were saying, yeah, how much does this knife cost? Unfortunately, yes, it costs $375. You're not going to find one for that price, unless they all of a sudden decide to make this a regular production knife, which they're not going to do. Or they do a second run, 392 Blackwash, just saying. They may do something like that. That's the only time you're going to get your hands on it for that price. If you really want one, you're going to pay secondary market price. Is it worth it? I don't know. To me, it wasn't. So I was super stoked to be able to get this at the normal price. But after having it in my hand and using it as my daily EDC and thinking, man, maybe it was worth the extra money. So you got to kind of decide for yourself. But that is the unfortunate thing about the ZT392. It's not a readily available knife to the general public. Now, they do have a knife coming out on the Kershaw brand. Oh, and I can't think of the name all of a sudden. I'm drawing a blank, but it's very similar to this design. It's very similar shape. The knife is escaping me. I apologize. But it's not going to be made with premium materials. It's going to be a budget knife. So you can experience the design. Kind of like if you wanted a, Rick Hinderer, you could buy a Cryo for $35 or $30. This, though, is head and shoulders above of any of the Hinderer designs, in my opinion. I've had the 560 series, the 562 series, the 566, all great, phenomenal knives. Love them all. But this one really stands out as being the best Hinderer yet. So, If you could take anything away from my review here, that's it. This is the best Hinderer knife made to date, in my opinion. I've given plenty of reasons why, you know, but again, it's my opinion, and that's what YouTube's about, right? Is about sharing your opinions and your thoughts with people, and not always are they going to be what you agree with, but let's be mature and kind and you know, respect each other's opinions. So that was kind of directed at someone individually, so hopefully they watch this video. Anyway, guys, ZT392, phenomenal. If you can get your hands on one at a reasonable price, absolutely get it. Jump on it. You will not be disappointed. Some more specs in the knife. It is about a 1/2 inch thick, so it is a beefy titanium frame lock, but not too beefy. So many of the knives I've had on the channel recently have been so beefy and just too much. This isn't too much. It's just right. It's thick, but not too thick. So you know that it's built to use. It's built to last. I mean, you can use this thing, beat on it all you need to, and it's going to handle it. So I don't know what else to say. I am absolutely smitten by the ZT392. My favorite ZT to date, my favorite Hinderer design to date. Can't wait to get some customization going on this. I mean, I don't even know that I would ever anodize this knife. I love this stonewash finish so much, this working finish, that I think I'll just switch out the hardware to different such and kind of mess around and play around with that a little bit, and then it'll be good. So this one, guys, though, I'll tell you a story. I recently had some car repairs kind of just come up out of nowhere. I just actually bought a new car. It's kind of an older car, and I didn't anticipate on having to do some repairs to it already. And I did, so I had to save. I mean, I'm talking a timing belt change and some other kind of expensive things. And I basically had to sell some knives to help fund that. And this one, of course, would have yielded the most return by far. I would have actually made money on selling this knife. But guess what other ones got sold? A few other ones got sold, and I kept the 392. That right there should tell you something. Even though it was the most profitable knife I had in my collection at the time, where I could make the most money and, you know, get the most out of it, I kept it because I love it that much, and I don't want to get rid of it. And there's that sentimental feeling. There's that sentimentalness. That's not a word. There's that, you know, just the sentimental value of it to me is you can't put a price tag on it because of the way it was obtained, the way that Kai went out of their way, ZT knives, to make some of us very, you know, they really appreciate their biggest fans, let's put it that way, and they took care of us, and that right there means this knife was not going anywhere anytime soon. Alright guys, that's kind of a more long-winded review than I normally do, but you know what, that's just how I feel about this knife. It's phenomenal. It cuts great. It's held, I mean, it's crazy sharp. It's held its edge. I'm very, very impressed with this steel. Nothing negative to say. I can't think of anything that I would give negative marks on this knife. That's how good it is. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Any questions or comments, leave them down below. We'll see you on the next video.